until they learn better science. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Besides being a poor technique, and you've clearly demonstrated that, do you feel that this tactic is unfair in any way, or that it's not necessarily something that allows you an adequate response to?
Rushing?
Like, would you just talk about the social impact? In our group, we've tried to sort of socially engineer it out of people because there are certain things our rule set doesn't allow. So
unfair
could you talk
is
about
a weird word to me. I would say that you are forcing someone into a bad choice. And I think that that's not necessarily a nice thing to do. You know what I'm saying? Is it a legal tactic? Go ahead and do it, so long as you're not being dangerous.
I guess what I would ask is, if we were fighting with real swords,
right,
and I were to close distance that quickly,
right,
and we were actually fighting in a true duel, what would your normal response have been to win that duel?
The techniques I just showed you.
Okay.
The techniques I just showed you.
Would there be anything else that?
Oh, yes, the other techniques
that were not allowed.
Thank you for reading me there. You're a very kind man. So, how many people fight cut thrust? Raise your hand. How many people bull rush and cut thrust? Nobody. Let's talk about why. This place where you must cross through in tempo is a place where you may be struck with the edge of my sword in one time. Does everybody understand that? If I want to strike you with my edge, normally I have to use 2 times to do it. 1 and 2. Does that make sense to everybody? Unless I'm in a guard that allows me for a one-time cut. But if he steps into this place and meets my blade aside, now it's 1 time. And I am blasting through this. That's not going to stop me. And I'm hitting him in the side of the head. And another one, he reaches out with his sword. I hit his hand. I cut his hand. Alright? His hand goes flying free. His sword goes flying free, and he bleeds to death. Does that make sense? And it is that gray zone that he crosses where all of those edge blows work. So that's a technique I would use. I would use the edge of my sword in that fashion if I couldn't get the point. Or if he got my blade off. The next thing I would do is if he closed and I managed to pull on his blade, alright, and he managed to come up close. Here, well then it's all kinds of new things. Alright? I have all kinds of new techniques that I would do. There's an elbow, there's a knee, okay? Outside a little bit here, I want you to come this way. Here, there's a pommel. Does that make sense? There are all kinds of horrifying things that you can do to one another with the other bits of this sword that our rules disallow us from doing. The key one is the edge blow. That's the big one, you know? I mean, a hill punch, a knee, that's anybody's game as soon as we're up to each other's body. But, however, we are barred from doing all those things. Does it make sense? I, sadly, can't actually pommel knock somebody who wants to try to hurt themselves or me. You know, I can't do it. That's all right. That's fine. But so understand that there are a multitude of things that are barred from us to do that would be logical to do against such an attack. Here's the other thing, though. This is very important. Several of the period masters that I've read have said something about the person who just does this. Silver talks at length about it. He says one of the problems with the rapier is that a guy can just get the hell in there and stab you to death really quick with but a little work. And he's not entirely wrong. He's not entirely wrong. However, if you use the things I talked about earlier, that becomes less and less likely. Does that make sense? He was generally railing against bad teachers, in my opinion, and those bad teachers and the techniques they were teaching. I think if they had good technique, he wouldn't have as many objections. Most of them talk about what's called, quote unquote, and this is sadly sometimes used as a pejorative in our society against people who don't study rapier, but the bestial fighter, the bestial man who's been untrained, right? And that they will come at you hard and fast. But neither of you guys are untrained. You both have good technique. That person is a dangerous person to fight, either in reality or on the field. You have to deal with them very precisely. Okay? Let's talk about mindset for a second. One of the things that kills me in the SCA, and has always killed me in the SCA, is my brain. My own head gets in my way more than anything else in the world. I have the worst tournament mind. I think in my 10 or 12 years in the SCA, I think I might have won 5 tournaments in the entire time. I consistently place pretty well, but my brain gets in my way worse than anything else in the world. And that is the first thing that messes with you when somebody charges you, is your head. Because you're like, oh, and then, boom, you're struck. You have to have cold mind. You have to have a very even keel. You have to regulate your breathing when you're fighting someone. Okay? You have to regulate your thoughts. You have to see the line they're drawing, and you have to be tense and ready to move. You can't just, I cannot just stand flat-footed against him. I will die. Does that make sense? I need to have energy in my body, my mind needs to be focused, and I need to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay? All right? And I need to be able to react, and I need to do it with choice. Okay? Someone once told me, his name is Master Chan, actually, from KWAR. He looked at me and he said, if you mean to strike, strike. What does that mean? If you mean to strike, strike. Do not hesitate in these situations. If you hesitate, they win. Does that make sense? If they are doing this, you know what to do it. It will not work the first few times. You'll miss, right? You won't have the tempo right. You'll be mad at me. You'll be like, looking me up on Evo being like, dude, you taught me something and it didn't work and it's all your fault. Keep trying. Keep trying. Eventually, the timing will click. These guys have a funny saying about me. They always know when I'm studying a new manual, my progress tanks. and I die.
Andrew, give him a new book.
Give me a new book. You want to meet me? Give me a new book. Ooh, I want to try this, punk. Wow. All right. But what that does for me is it's giving me this insight where I know that the longer I work at this thing, the better I'll get at it. So long as I don't lose faith in it. Does that make sense? It's good science. What I'm giving you here is good science. Don't lose faith in it, even if you lose. You will start to win. If you got a question, you can go ahead and give me a jingle or whatever, or plenty of other people who understand these concepts of tempo and measure, etc. But don't lose faith that this is a bad idea. Okay? Fencing is not a series of tricks. Good fencing is not a series of tricks. Does everybody get what I mean by that? All too often in the SCA, we have teaching that goes like this. Come on, well, let me show you this trick. Everybody heard that before? Let me show you this move. Let me show you this trick. Let me show you this move. Let me show you this move. I'm going to beat, and then you're going to come back. I'm going to disengage and hit you. That's the first trick I ever learned in the SCA. Beat, disengage, your pose, right? What did I really do? Okay, on guard. Here, when he came back, I used counter time to hit him. Okay? If I just teach that as a trick, or only learn it as a move, when it doesn't work, I won't go on. Because I don't understand the core principle behind it. Does that make sense? I understand counter time, come on guard. I can apply it in all sorts of different ways. I can feint, and as he moves, I can hit him. Okay? As he beats my blade, I can come up and hit him. Does that make sense? I can apply this in so many different ways because I understand the core of it. Right? I get this idea. What's that? I can't hear you. Semantics. You think it's semantics? I don't think so. I think there's a difference between a system and a move. Does that make sense? The system tells me all sorts of things about time, tempo, measure. Right? The move tells me what to do with my body only at that moment. Does that make sense? It doesn't tell me the different applications. It just says, I do this, he comes back, I do this, and hit it. Does that make sense? The system says if I get his hand in motion and go on his tempo, no matter how I do it, I can strike it. Which gives me creative freedom to do it in a lot of different ways. Does that make sense? That's the advantage to learning a system over a series of tricks. And the very best fencers in the SCA fight from a system. It's not the same one. Everybody has a different way to do it. But you watch the top fighters in the SCA, the people who consistently place high in tournament, people who consistently do well in melee, people who consistently just throw down and kick ass, all of them fight from a very particular system. It's not always the same. I don't fight like he fights. But we both have a system to what we do. I don't fight like he fights, but he has a system to what he does. He has the ability, because of this framework of his fighting, to creatively do different things in the fight based upon what he knows about combat. Does that make sense to everybody? Whether I'm open-handed, whether I've got a battle axe, whether I've got a spork, the system of combat is the same. These principles don't change.
Give me my hammer.
Sir Logos is one of my favorite people in the SCA, and I've always said that I think that man is probably just as dangerous with a spork as he is with a sword. Okay? Because he gets the system of combat. Okay? Okay, now that's all science, right? That's all great in the lab. How do we apply it? How do I actually go and do this? How do I practice doing this? Here's the problem with practicing this particular question, dealing with somebody who charges you. you're not necessarily going to find a